this woman has inspired me. Like, she is like one of like the top stars of the constellation of people who truly showed me that there was a path for people like us. I hate to say people like us because, you know, this is a broad range. Maybe I'll just say people like me. Where she showed me that the relationship to language could be, after, you know, schooling and graduate schooling and homeschooling, good schooling, all of a sudden, like, the roof got taken off in terms of what is it to truly have mastery, or just even a beginner's relationship with language and with story and with the roots of story. And you know, she hails in terms, she brings together this wild constellation of astrology and activism and commitment and village-mindedness, and how do we meet the times that we're in. And she told a story about, I don't know, like 16 years ago, 18 years ago, at Pioneers. And this story, I really say more than any other, has been one of those stories that lives inside of me, that actually informs me at those moments when I feel stuck and lost and seeing the world in a specific way, or living in the world in a specific way. And this is the story that I call on, probably more than any other, when I realize that there's another way to live with sovereignty in the world. And it's about a bigger connection to the whole. So that is my very informal, unscripted introduction, because I know that you guys have seen all the other accolades, and so I didn't need to do that. And what Caroline said was that you have full sovereignty to use the chat room as much as you like, and that we will bounce between. So if you, you know what, I'm just gonna hand over the reins.
Wonderful. Well, yo team, some of you I know, and some of you it's a memory of the future. There we go. Hi there. So yeah, so feel free. So there's a lot of storytelling in many venues that I do, and a lot of what I do in astrological readings is I tell people their own story. But always, you know, it's a daunting thing to do, but always checking in, going, are we in accord? Does this resonate? You know, and yes, or, you know, so that we're in cahoots, so that we're all traveling together. So in that sense, you know, feel free to type things into the chat section as we go, like, what does that mean? Or how wonderful, or, you know, a conundrum or a blessing. And I may go over there, you know, and we also want to leave plenty of room for to and fro, or reassurance that we're traveling together, right? So, so many storytellings. I love, my friend Gioia Timpanelli, a Sicilian storyteller, says, you know, there are traditional openings, right? And one is, there are 4 ways of traveling: walking, crawling, swimming, flying, and how we're going to travel now. Woohoo, woohoo. Oops, that's 5. Okay, 5 ways of traveling: walking, crawling, swimming, flying, and how we're going to travel now. Woohoo, woohoo, as we enter into the realm of story. And I love Terry Pratchett saying, here we are in this little circle of firelight we call the physical world, right? Surrounded by vast, pulsing mystery. Whoa, whoa. And we're all gathering, you know, scraps of things and conversations and different chapters of our lives that, you know, that are all flowing into our body now, because it's a time of pragmatic mysticism. Let's use everything that we have. And so I love a radio guest that I hosted, Rachel Harris, who wrote a really great book called Listening to Ayahuasca in America, full of many crucial things. But in it, she delineates a neuroscience study that said, you know, when we feel or speak to an invisible presence, it is the same in our brain as though we were speaking to a physical good friend. So I love that, right? So our brain is democratic between visible and invisible, and probably between realistic and fiction. All language, all, you know, it's all democratic and equal. So I think it's very witty, and thanks to Leah's incredible inadvertent patience and tracking me down and all kinds of things. And here we are Tuesday, because this is the State of the Union address that's happening behind us, right? So we're the real State of the Union. We're doing, you know, the only news to trust is the mythic news. So let's deliver the State of the Union, because, and where are we? So last night was the, you know, for those in this country, the caucus. ah, ah, ah. May it be presided over by crows, right? The caucus without result. Let's animate everything. And storytellers, in fairy tales, crows are the keepers of the uber narrative. Very important to listen to crows in a fairy tale, because the crows are saying, if only Prince so-and-so knew not to drink that sleeping draught, then he would awake and his true love would come. Only he could hear that, right? So listening to the crows, who are the keeper of the uber narrative. And when George W. Bush was president, the crows used to gather outside the White House every time he gave an outdoor press conference. And every time he spoke, he would go, what? And they would go, lies, lies. Anyway, so crows. So here we are at State of the Union. And for bonus points, today, right now, is exact midwinter. We have the solstices and equinoxes, but we also have what's called the 4 cross-quarter holidays: Halloween, Candlemas or Imbolc, May Day, Beltane, and Lammas. These are exact mid-season. So we round them off October 31st and stuff, but it's really exact mid-season when the sun is at 15 plus degrees of the fixed signs. And that's today, it's right now. So it's the State of the Union. So we're going to animate what's really desirable. I'm taking a peek at my chart here, which I will share. Because, part of what I love about the astrological language is it's a storytelling language, but it reminds us that we live in a storytelling creation, that everything's telling us its story all the time by its shape, its color, its song, its rhythm. And if we humans just approach the world with informed, reverent curiosity, we'd be good citizens again on this planet. So, so that realm of curiosity. So true Candlemas, so true Imbolc. Right now, the sun is at 15 Aquarius. So these are called the 4 gates of power, Halloween and now, today, when power is especially eager to be invited into the world. And this wedding of power and story goes back as far as we have mythic memory. What's going on at equinoxes and solstices and gatherings, of which we're a kind of modern telepathic version. It's people calling in power. We don't source power, we invite it, right? Come on in, power, and animate this story or this painting. At equinoxes and solstices, we have the earliest form of magic theater, a literal and symbolic light of sun illuminate this writing, this painting at the back of the cave. This is the story our community wants to animate. Well, team, that's what an election is meant to be. And as we, again, explore the fabulous liberatingness of language, our word inaugurate comes from the augur, the diviner, right? The diviner would walk out into nature, observing nature's patterns, because we're pattern tracking beings, and nature would reveal the responsible human who would then be inaugurated. We go, let's bring that back. There we go. So maybe never more life is on the line in a dance with our capacity to unite with nature to tell a desirable story of how do we get through this thing and keep as much life alive as possible. So true Candlemas, right now, this is when Persephone lights her candle and it begins ascending up out of the underworld, and we with her, right? And then Persephone becomes a groundhog, but it's the same idea, right? At this mid-season, and so for us all, personally and collectively, what's the story we want to animate? And yeah, Leah was reminding me, she's like, well, there's a story that you told 18 years ago that means more than anything, and I can't completely remember, so maybe I'll tell it. And I go, no, tell me what it is and I'll tell it. Okay, right, my story. All right, but it's not my story. But we all gather these things, and the stories are alive. And thank you, Leah, because the fresh telling of a story brings it alive, which is why we want discernment about the stories we tell about ourselves and language, because everything can be liberating or imprisoning, right? And it's a big time now about into Pluto's cauldron. But thank you, Leah, because I'd forgotten that story. I mean, I told it so much because it's so important that I then parked it, but it's fresh. You've made it fresh again. And and it's really the story of, I met a man who was working in UN refugee camps, and this was 18 years ago. And at that point, right, there were no tents available. Every refugee piece of equipment was in use, right? It's a world of refugees, animals, humans, everything. Um, but he told me about the scariest time in his life when he was working with the UN. I think they were in mm, Rwanda. And the week before, colleagues of his had been kidnapped and murdered. And they were walking down the street and they were kidnapped. They had bags put on their head. They were shoved into a van, and they could just see through the bags that guys with AK-47s and bloodshot eyes were, and he said, we thought we were going to die, but he remembered his time as a psychologist, and he said to his fellow kidnappees, "We've got to change the story. We're not being kidnapped, we're being helped." So they began to thank their captors. "Oh man, thank you so much for keeping us safe in this very complex environment. We were very clueless." And their captors were puzzled at first. See, unexpected behavior is almost always a good idea, right? Because you're changing the story, going, whoa. So they began to thank their captors, and their captors were puzzled. But that night, the captors locked them up and said, "Don't worry, we're locking you up, but there's a guard outside, so you'll be safe." And 2 days later, let them go. So that stayed with him forever, and that stayed with me forever. And then I told the story, and it stayed with Leah forever, and maybe with all of you. We've got to change the story. We're not being fill in the blank. We're being, see, and that's where it's, of course they weren't being helped, but they made it so, right? So again, wild, phantasmagorical flights of fancy and disrupting of the narrative. This is part of our skill set that we really want, disrupting the narrative, and will bring the quality of the necessity of the liberating trickster within all of us, eager to be born right now. And so when I was, I actually got, I was part of Pacifica's team of reporting on the conventions. I was the Mythic News storyteller, and many, many stories from that. But one of the great lights in Cleveland at the Republican Convention was an unsteady but long dedicated trickster named Vermin Supreme, right, who always runs. And sometimes his stuff worked and sometimes it didn't, but I saw him doing some great things. So he said, when things are about to get polar, you got to disrupt that. So there was police and protesters, and it started to get tense, and the police were on bicycles. So Vermin grabs a megaphone and says to the police, "Remember to do it how we rehearsed it, lads." Right? So suddenly they were self-conscious, and he goes, "You on the left, you're not bicycling very straight," right? And suddenly they completely lost the story, right? It was disrupted. And then when it started to get tense again, he had the protesters chant, "Give the cops a raise, give the cops a raise." There we go. And when the Baptist church, the Westboro Baptist Church, hate mongers were on the street going, "Oh, you're all pedophiles and sodomites and, evil, drug smoking, whatever." And Vermin goes, "Those are my voters," right? And the police crack up, right? And also there was a fantastic guy there, Free Hugs Ken. You got to be authentic, right? But he big black guy, cops just, and it's part of, like, whatever we speak to in another is the part of them we're inviting to dance with the corresponding part of ourselves. It's really important as we head into this hot thing. So the reason, and we're all working on this forever, but the reason we don't want to be judgy, we want to be agents of liberation. We want to be discerning and spicy and disruptive to tyranny. But the reason we don't want to be judgy is we're inviting the least evolved part of somebody to dance with the least evolved part of us, and it's just not going to be pretty at all. So right, so we're gathered at this powerful time, right? It's true Candlemas and the State of the Union and the everything, and we go, we'll use everything. So I have, yes, props and allies and things. So to open our communion with the invisible, and to feel part of the story of now, to feel the downrush of, through antiquity, anybody who's ever been dedicated to what we're dedicated to, wants to pour into our bodies. So sangomas, medicine people in South Africa have muti. Muti means power and medicine. We true power is that which heals. And they gave me some, and this is sort of a backup supply of it. A subdivision of muti is called umpepu, and it's they say it's only used by sangomas and medicine people or people you meet who are of good heart. We're just gonna take that. And by telepathic communion, the model is the umpepu opens the channels between our our whew, ha, 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 whew, ha, okay, our the ancestors. So we're convening the Ouija board of directors now. Come in, positive ancestors. There we go. And they remind us of something that wonderful writer Nora Hall said. Deliberate celebration of the change of seasons stirs the creative powers of the psyche. So deliberate. And when we look up words in a good dictionary, they're alive. We want to be cooking everything back to its originating impulse before it got orthodoxed or constrained or hoodwinked or kidnapped into its, and etymology is a great way to do that. So one of my favorite new old words is the word deliberate, because it comes from Libra, balance, and it comes from two Latin verbs, libare, to liberate, and liberare, to liberate, and librare, to balance. So I go, oh, that's so cool. One word, to be deliberate is to be in a state of liberating balance. I go, oh, that's fun, right? Because if we can speak of it, we can put it in our magic backpack and go, oh, so we do want to be deliberate as part of our expanding repertoire of ways of being. So Norhall says, deliberate celebration of the change of seasons stirs the creative powers of the psyche, because it's the year's story. Right, so we're in the northern hemisphere. This is midwinter. This is the time of arising, and all the myths have the resonance of the descent into the underworld, and then the slow return. And we all go down and come up. But how the story up.
This is Leah. Could you, we haven't had a chance to get into the whole story or comprehensive, grounded understanding of what is a myth to bring everyone onto that same page. Could you talk about that with us?
I can do a little end run. I like thinking of mythic figures as metaphoric animations of intrinsic intelligence in nature. Right, so we will speak of what metabolizes poison, for instance, mushrooms and things in nature that metabolize poison. And then we'll bring in maybe the wrathful dakinis, who are ancient pre-organized religion that were depicted as part woman, part animal, and they represent that in nature and that in us that we want to call upon that metabolizes poison. They cook the poison of anger into the tonic of wrath, fierce protection of all life. They cook the poison of seduction into the tonic of magnetism, bring everything alive. So what is mythos, and the mythic news? So I track I track myth stories, guiding stories, but I really never use the word archetype, right? Just myself, right? Because it's a very old word, and now everybody uses it like the archetype of breakfast, the archetype of whatever, the archetype of the soul. Jung used that word archetype to smuggle spicy, lively, maybe dangerously disruptive in a good way things into academia. Nothing to worry about here. There's absolutely no magic. It's an archetype, right? It's just a thing. You can put it in a box and study it and won't, as opposed to most traditions, if we track back, other words, these are orishas, these are intelligences, these are living things that have some quality of autonomy. So myth and fairy tale. Well, let me So my particular affinity, and we're all invited to think of our lives like spiritual detective novels in which every affinity is a clue to be, explored. So I love, I have to circle around back to myth, but myth, fairy tales, and detective novels. I like them. It's the same theme. They are operative guidance systems in a way. So there's a lot of distorted myth, all kinds of stuff, right? Okay. But in a way, it's, what is it to be a mannered human and to cooperate? Well, these are big, vast things. But the reason I love detective novels, myths, and fairy tales as one thing is that it's about the descent and the return. So I see some of you, hi there, David, who've been in my classes. You can chant along as we come to familiar material. But I was wondering, and wonder attracts revelation. I wonder what the oldest detective novels in the world are. 232 BC in China, it turns out, are the oldest known, very old, very old. And they say the purpose of the detective magistrate for all of us is to dive into the underworld in order to restore human affairs to be in accord with the mandate of heaven and earth, right? So a myth might be a guiding aspirational story that wants to be replenished by fresh and original telling in some way. But since I'm in this one of my familiar detective novel realms, let me just go for it a little more, because everything is trying to help the humans out now because we've made such a pickle of things, right? So all traditions are reporting in, all of nature's meeting backstage, going, what are we going to do about the humans? We got to either kill them or heal them. Let's do both. Let's make old things, anything that has moved humans to participatory conscious kinship, let's bring it alive again through fresh telling. So for each one of us, here it's like, what is one drawn to, and how would it like you to bring it alive in a fresh way as something we need now? So apparently 232 BC detective novels are also reporting in, because they said when navigating the underworld, and we all are, I mean, the underworld is the overworld right now. It's completely inside out in the world, and it's dangerous, right? And many cultures have a word for the powerful magic that comes in dangerous times. So from 232 BC in China, they said, if you're descending into the underworld, it's very good to have a buddy. It's very good to have a buddy with whom you share cheating, death, dark humor, jauntiness. It's very good to be jaunty in the underworld. It goes much better. All right. And they said, your greatest protection in the underworld is authenticity. Because if you are authentic, here's what will happen, they say to us from 232 BC. Bad people will come up and they go, oh, I was going to rob you and murder you, but I can sense that you're authentic. Your inside and your outside match. So I want to join your team. Now, see, I love this for us. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking to whistleblowers and across borders and everything, and we're such a chaotic dynamic here, and again, whatever we speak to in the other, we want nuance, discourage the bad, encourage the good, right? So in whistleblowers, they're like, we've done terrible, horrible things for 40 years at the NSA, but now we want to leave. And it's like, absolutely, come on over there. Yes, and in 232 BC, they said the people you recruit that way by your authenticity will have essential underworld skills that the more innocent that we need. So anyway, I love that part. So myth, let's wonder what a myth is in a fairy tale. But we know that part of our healing of the world is that cultures used to symbolically embed their science in their myths and fairy tales. So myths and fairy tales are meant to be stories handed down with codes and layers of meaning under the recitation and the chanting. So the Inanna myth is the Venus astronomical cycle. There's a whole other lecture there. And also William Irwin Thompson has this fabulous essay on the fairy tale Rapunzel, in which he absolutely teases out from it the entire history of biology on the planet Earth, the orbital cycle of the moon, Mars, and Venus, and tremendous amounts of botany. And it's genius. Well, maybe since I'm wandering here, just a little tidbit. He talks about the origin of sex on the planet as in the fairy tale Rapunzel. It's pretty good. Let me see if I can do it in a, excuse me, in a short way. But do people know? I should smoke the camera as well. Oh, I see. That's true. Thank you. That's a good idea. Yes, smoke the camera as well. Thank you, chatting team. Right. So there's the camera. Thank you, camera. There we go. There, now everybody's fully smoked. Right. Oh, Leah, what was I about to say? Right. Spacing out. Wait a minute.
Oh, you were about to tell us a story about, oh gosh, I got so distracted. The smoke just like blew it away from my own mind.
Rapunzel.
Rapunzel. Thank you, Captain Gardner. I can always count on you to remind me what I was about to say. Let's see if we can do that. Yeah. So very briefly, so I don't know how many of you are, right, sex and Rapunzel, right, Rapunzel and sex, Rapunzel, thank you. That's great. So see, in a fairy tale, so as briefly, right, so there is a pregnant woman, and in her pregnancy, she gazes over the wall and into the witch's garden, right? So in a fairy tale, when we do that, we're gazing backwards in time, right, into herbal knowledge at a time of her pregnancy. And she says to her husband, I must have this Rapunzel, this dark leafy green vegetable that grows in the witch's garden. He gets some for her, and she goes, I must have more. And I think it's the third time, when in the fairy tale, when men go up over a wall and into the witch's garden, well, it's not going to be good. And the witch catches him the third time and goes, oh, well, now you've got to give me the kid that's being born. So he talks about looking backwards in time, and he says, on this planet Earth, the original cells were called mother-daughter cells, and they just duplicated. Duplicate. There's no sex. It's just duplicating. So there's no sex, right? It's mother-daughter cells. We're looking backwards into mother-daughter cells. Then in the course of evolution, we get sex. And there are plants that can self-pollinate, but they would prefer sex. But also he made this great thing. He goes, because the mother-daughter cells are just duplicating, there's no sex, there's no death. There's no individual, there's no death. Once you get sex, you get death. I'm like, wow, of course, how interesting. Whoa, put that in our pipe and smoke it. And then he says, so the mother-daughter cell is looking backwards in time and all those things. And then he says, just stories within stories within stories, fractal. When he was researching, and you remember that Rapunzel gets put in a tower by the witch, and she lets down her hair, Rapunzel, let down your blonde hair, and the witch climbs up it, and one day a prince comes along, and okay. But when Thompson is researching the fairy tale, he decides he'll look up Rapunzel, this dark rampion, this dark green plant, thinking it's probably good for pregnant women. But it's even better than that. The plant is the story. The plant Rapunzel grows up like a straight tower, and it sends out 2 golden braids to attract pollination. Okay, it's a plant that can self-pollinate, but it prefers sex. And it's like, I just find this so funny. Anyway, now back to here. Okay, so what's myth? What's fairy tale? What's the? Well, let's move out. I want to move a little bit into now and who's here. Okay, so I'm going to share the chart of now, just for the fun of it. Okay, so it's always on my screensaver. This is just the chart of what's in the sky right now from my Coyote Dragon World Headquarters in Cabin John, Maryland. But it's even better than I thought. Right, for the fun of it, 22 Virgo is rising right now. See, we're telling ourselves the story that we can be backstage influential. When this country was founded, America, apologies to the world and to everybody not American, Neptune, its dream, its vision, its myth, its guiding vision, its myth, its aspiration to live up to was at 22 Virgo. So the secret soul of America is rising due east right now. Let's help it out. And just for the fun of it, there are metaphors for each degree of the zodiac. Mars, straight down in Sagittarius, 22 Sagittarius, storytelling realm. And its image, that degree, is the crown and torch of the Statue of Liberty, the necessity to defend democracy from tyranny. And we go, oh, yeah, Oh, alrighty. So I'm going to point some astrology things out, but not to worry. I will always aspire to translate into useful English. But who's here? Who are we? You know, it's like I studied with this great 88-year-old woman. I still aspired to live up to the simple things that were so important. She was teaching us about public speaking, right? And it was mostly, you know, diplomats' wives, you know, people selling real estate, and me, right? But Hester was a genius and fierce, very, very fierce. You know, when people would say, she'd give us assignments, stand up and talk about something, and somebody would say, what I want to talk to you about today is, she'd go, we don't give a bleep what you want, hit it. Anyway, well, but Hester said, before you tell a story, before you presume to direct anybody's attention, answer the question, why am I talking to these people now about this, and what do I want them to do? And Hester said, look at the world. Nobody's even asking that question, right? And she was also very emphatic about, I'll see if I can find different little scraps of notes. Well, we'll see if they surface. But she was very emphatic about, you know, she said in antiquity, and see right now in our chart, the way a chart is it's a map. This is the Earth, this is me, Cabin John, Maryland, you know. The only thing different from a usual map is that on the left, this is the horizon, is east, on the right is west. We can see, for our gathering, everything's on the west. Little asteroid, little north node, Mars is just over the border, which is, again, how are we going to give woofy expression to some very ancient things? You know, so here we are. Okay, so the moon overhead, why are we talking to each other, you know, about these things, and what do we want to do? So the moon, many ways of telling that story. The moon in classical Greek astrology is the public, right? And it's also our heritage as kind of lunar wizards and witches and whatnot. Straight up overhead, pretty much, you know, for our convening. In Gemini, conversation in this section of sky called the ninth house about storytelling. To storytell deep things in a conversational way. And remember, conversation, great word, con is with versus turning. Conversation means we're all in a giant turning together. You know, we're all in a conversing, and we're all in the same dream. So the moon in Gemini is opposite Mars. It's, you know, woof, 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 the crown and torch of the Statue of Liberty, calling all feisty, creative voices for sane reverence and feistiness now. But we also want to include, right, the moon has a 90-degree angle to Venus in Pisces. If you're outside and it's clear on the East Coast, you'll see Venus just setting in the west. Really great. If you're on the West Coast, you know, you lucky people, and it's clear, you know, in 3 hours, you'll see Venus. Well, a little less than 3. You'll see Venus blazing bright in the west as the evening star of peace. And so Venus in Pisces, very ancient. Her image is a guiding vision of peace. So it says, well, the collective assignment here, as we're backstage delivering the real State of the Union address, may it be so, is to take profound things, you know, bring them alive in a fresh, vital way. Like, how are we going to live that story? What would it mean? And profound things in a conversational way. It's like I was talking to, we're doing a reading for just a wonderful woman in Hong Kong, and I was honored because she said that she was just so despairing about the bleakness of the world. She was just going to go meditate in a, you know, in a monastery, you know, but she found my sort of trickster teaching trainings online, and she's like, no, I'm back in trickster. There we go, which we want to honor in all of us in a moment. So I was honored by that, and it turns out she Yes, I think it's okay to say this. She writes the music for Cirque du Soleil, but she is a deeply esoterically trained. She knows the entire history of music and also how you can have very positive effect. And so I said, and this is to all of us too. So you're smuggling wisdom into mainstream disguised as entertainment. And she goes, yeah, right. So this is the capacity to smuggle guiding wisdom and to speak to the sane, reverent part of everybody, disguised as we're just conversing. There we go. So, and then I just want to bring in, so feisty storytelling, absolutely. Power of language, power of story, our dedication, because this is a whole tradition. Language and words are magic. They're alive. They accomplish things. It's why I don't want to be to myself and others an annoying corrector, but encourager, because everything can be imprisoning or liberating, including language, including astrology, including anything. So then for us to feel like when we say a word, is that like, or tell ourselves a story. There's a lot of ways we can play with this, but again, this fun, grand, square, immutable signs that says is available to everybody here is Virgo rising now, language craft, Pisces, Venus, vision, conversation, storytelling. So linguistic precision guides the vision. It's really useful. The more language, the more vocabulary we have, the more opportunities for collaborating with creation. So it's really great. And it's really great to look up words, right? So that we've done a couple of deliberate and inauguration and stuff, but some are really obvious, like privilege means private law. Privilege, and it's like, well, that's what it means, right? I'm also ardent about why women can't testify, because it comes from testes. It comes from Leviticus in the Bible, and thou shalt grab your balls and swear by them that whatever, and that's what testimony and testify mean. But we can ovify. So language play is good. Language grants us access to the realm it describes. If we can speak of it, we can journey there. And just for the fun of it, in this language, this storytelling language that just wants to guide us back into participatory storytelling, it'll come back to me. Maybe David will tell me what I was about to say. In this beautiful language, but I'll circle back. The words we say, and it's not like, tiptoey, like, I had a bad thought or a bad word. It's the repetitive, habitual use of words. So I like disrupting things. And speaking of disrupting, these are all planets, and way out in the Kuiper belt, beyond Pluto, there is an actual planet, Eris, goddess of disruption. And she's very out there. It's a little abstract, but mythologically, she wants in. And we go, welcome, yes, because she's very active now. And her image, the degree at which, in what way shall we be disruptive? And disruptive to what? So her image, where she's spending a long time, 23 plus Aries, that degree, is curtains blown inward in the shape of a cornucopia, letting in fresh air. So imagine that in the Capitol. Imagine that in stuffy halls going, imagine and give language in this collaborative dance, because we humans can't fix the pickle that we've created by ourselves. It's by ourselves that got us into this thing. So, collaborative cahooting. But look, disruptive, liberating, disruptive conversation would be great. Liberating feistiness. And see, I love the word liberating. And it came from a friend of mine who is a great and very positive-hearted political strategist, and who also loves early Christianity, the liberating parts of it. And so she was talking about liberating Christianity, and I go, oh, I love that, meaning the liberating qualities in Christianity and also setting it free. So I like using it in front of our names too, you know, liberating Maureen, liberating Katie, liberating Leah, liberating David, liberating Caroline, meaning setting us free, and we are agents of liberation. That is part of our superpower dedication. And I think that's a good thing to be. So stories, there is no prison for the unexpected. So unexpected language, you know, tired language, there's a prison for, right? It's all, but unexpected language and the magic of what's available to us now. I'm going to say this cool thing. Venus quintiles, right, has a 72-degree angle to Jupiter. There, you can't see it, but it's in this company, and which is a rare and beautiful thing. And it's about irresistible eloquence. Jupiter is the intelligence of storytelling. It is now in the realm of Capricorn, which is pragmatic application of everything we know. And it says some things are always true, but there are times when they're truer. So the stories we tell, the words we use, the metaphors we engage are especially eager to incarnate as actuality. And we say metaphors are the incarnational garb whereby power enters the world. Eagerly, all kinds of ways I can kind of point this out. But the quintile, 72-degree angle, is what we get when we divide the circle by 5. 5 is sacred to Venus. Venus forms a 5-petaled orbital design over 8 years. So I learned the quintile as irresistible eloquence in storytelling. It can be anything, but it's here for us all. It's here for us all right now. You know, and we see we're allowed to also do trickster blessings. Anything we would happily accept ourselves is part of what we can disruptively bless the world. You know, as an experiment, you know, may words flee from the mouths of liars. We go, okay, would I accept that if I were lying? Sure. What the hell? I mean, it's a gambit, you know, but it's like, well, let's do that. And we, you know, the antique, archaic, fabulous realm, or let me bring in trickster even more explicitly. Oh, wait. No, I have to finish this paragraph here. Because the irresistible eloquence, which is available, see if we're willing, irresistible eloquence available to everybody on this call, you know, and the reason I like it so much, and it was one of the very first objective things I learned in astrology as a little tiny esoteric student on Baker Street in London at the Astrological Lodge. So it's a pretty rare angle because it's got to be 72 degrees exactly. And ours is exact. It's exact within 10 seconds. So we would read authors, and if they had this texture of a kind of spicy eloquence, we would then guess if they had this pretty rare thing and look it up and go, oh, they did. So almost scientific. And it's a capacity to hold a true perception and to be like a tuning fork in that perception, that true perception, hums in others. So we don't have to convince them. They go, oh, fill in your name. Since you guided my gaze that way, I see that now. Right? So it's really clean, guiding people to their own autonomy. That's the essence of all teaching and really all storytelling, that we meet these parts of ourselves and realize our commonality and, you know, all of that. And in the fairy tale, as in the dream, we're all the characters, the bad witch, the tyrant, the thing, the thing, you know, and how we tell the story. So, and then, because we're always learning, what the hell, a wonderful colleague of mine that I've known for a bazillion years, astrologer, said, the quintile is all that you say, Caroline, but it's also the capacity to open portals between worlds. Like, all right, let's go. So there's a couple things going on here. So one, available to all of us for download, you know, Venus star of peace, vision of peace, Venus, quintiles Jupiter in Capricorn, applied knowledge, everything we've ever done, like how can we make the world more beautiful together? What's that story? Um, and um, and it's also, it says from idealism, from backstage idealism, romanticism, and dreams are eager to enter into incarnational actuality. Imagine if we had structures of health support and governance support in which was compassionate and ingenious. Imagine these things, imagining and telling the story, and telling the story of telling the story of history backwards, like how we made it okay. And then let me well, how we tell the story. See, Venus says, we're all very different. Rah, 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 oppositional difference. That's really fun. In the Quran, which has some surprisingly liberating moments, like everything. Gabriel goes to Muhammad goes to Gabriel, the angel, and says, we could have had no conflict or evil at all if you'd made us all alike. And Gabriel says, well, Allah could have made you all alike, but no, you'd have none of it. The greater assignment is to come into accord from maximum unique difference. It's in the Quran. Yeah, come into harmony, tolerance, really good. So this is like blah, 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 and this is, remember, we're all in this dream together. We're all parts of each other in some way. And and let me also, because this is also a capacity just within all of us to be frustrated and angry, and then to compost that. So things that I play with, because I go to the underworld in many ways, and I also went to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, because friends got me in. I go, I'll go anywhere, and I go, like myself, right? And it works because it's mostly playful, right? People are like, oh, but I did see these right-wing Austrian economists, and one of them even had an eye patch and a cane, and they really looked like Batman villain, and I had critical contempt in my heart. I was like, right? But remember, we are all being issued harumpitude composters, giant Pluto cauldron things that we can take with us to compost our harumpitude, because conversation is only possible when we're curious and not judgmental. What's your story? And so anyway, so I was like, compost harumpitude, don't have any attitudinal, snooty, condescending snark, discern, these people are, there is a tyrannical and scary Nazi aspect to their economy, but composting harumpitude. And then they made their way towards me, and they go, yeah, let's come back into reality, into human form. And they said, you, who are you? Right. And I said, I'm Coyote Network News. I'm a mythological news service for the trickster redeemer within us all. And they said, that is so cool. Right. So see, if I'd said an environmentalist, feminist, whatever, right, there's a prison for any word that ends with IST. And I'm stuck with the Visionary Activist show because, what the hell? I mean, we all make compromises, but so fresh language, it set everybody free. And then we had an interesting conversing, right? And I just want to kind of play with this dynamic. So, and it's part of the story of, how do we get to be liberating storytelling agents? And a crucial part of that in life, in storytelling, in anything, is our manner of relating. Right. I just got distracted. Leah said language grants us access to the land. Well, language grants us access to the realm it describes. If we can speak of it, we can journey there. So it's part of Jupiter's storytelling, journeying, blessing, all of those things. So it would be, we're in a hot, dangerous time. For each one of us, an inward dedication magnetizes an outward opportunity that we be liberating. spicy storytellers, with whatever occasion arises, small or large, right? And let me, I guess, go back to the chart just because it helps me to think better. Just to look at this thing, because there's some other really beautiful things I want to point out and then animate, which is Uranus, trickster. Uranus represents nature's evolutionary trickster genius. It's been stationing, appearing to stand still for a very long time at 2 degrees Taurus, which is the reblooming, rewilding the Earth degree. May it be that our species has manners of collaborative engagement again. That would be really, really good. That would be really good. Um, so, um, and so Uranus is trickster genius, and it's at 2 degrees of Taurus. So it's got a beautiful 60-degree angle here to Mercury, mind, voice, intellect. So they're in harmony. So it just says available here. Cooperators are standing by. Who wants irresistible eloquence and trickster metaphoric language skills? And the backstage says, all we want from you humans is an inner heartfelt proclamation of availability and willingness, right? And then just, we all get to dance with shadow. But let me so oops, and I let me come back into reality so I can also see the right. But so are we humming? I mean, are we in accord? Is this useful? Are we liking this? Is Maureen happy? That's good. All right, that's good. Yeah, and do feel free to chime in. There's the notes I see. Oh, there's a whole other team of people. It goes on forever. Hi there, everybody. Hello. Look, I'm eavesdropping on you now. There we go. All right, it goes on. There's a lot of people here. Hi. Oh, Celia. Wow. That's adorable. Yes, I know these people. Celia, it's just as a fun thing. Celia, you helped produce, you catalyzed one of the best shows ever, which was all the young environmental winners the one particular year. I've got to find that in the archives because it was great. And just a wonderful thing that Celia did then is she said, I wanted them all to have a venue in which all of them could be present, because they were so deep, and in a way that, and I love when the guests mate, with each other. There was a Christian fundamentalist guy restoring Eden, and a really hip hop black gardening guy from South Central LA, and they made it on the air. They bonded in a wonderful thing, overcoming things to find a shared vision. It was just really great. All right, so
Yeah,
I'll stop.
Since we're celebrating Celia, she also taught me, speaking of how to animate the story that you most want to live in, we worked at the UN climate talks together, and we were covering media, giving voice to those that don't often get to be heard. And she said, bring lots of chocolate. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, no. I mean, like, bring lots of chocolate. And I was like, okay, I've learned you trust Celia when she tells you to do something. So I brought lots of chocolate. And the first thing that we did, I should say the first thing that Celia did, I just followed her, was she made friends with all the guards. All the guards and all the policemen that ran the inside of the UN climate area. And just, it's illegal to have protests there and on the inside. And so the first thing she does, she goes and makes friends with them. And eventually the activists that were granted access did make a choice to stage a protest, knowing that they could very well be thrown out. And in the video, you'll see the policemen protecting the activists. That true allyship and connection had been created through Celia's amazing experience and true allyship. And it was a beautiful thing to witness.
Well, we want to cross borders, and again, the description here is everybody here, according to this guiding frame story, has the capacity to be a cross-pollinating agent, to weave, separate into accord. Now that's genius, and in a fairy tale, right? And all of life is a fairy tale. How you treat the guards, how you treat the Sufi wise guy disguised as the beggar at the base of the mountain, how you treat the homeless guy, is essential if you have manners, right? Essential to whether you pull off the thing or not. And I love, again, vernacular, mythological and things. And I work with a wonderful woman, Michaela, just a great, radiant singer and drummer. We've worked together for decades and decades. And I just remember walking down the street with her in DC, and every homeless person we came to, she said, "Hello, King." And every one of them said, "Hello, Queen." And I go, "Ami, do you know them?" And she's like, "No." However we speak to another is how they will respond in kind. Hello, King. Hello, Queen. And then we're into this really fun thing, and again, where are the opportunities and the curiosity? What's your story? What's going on? I work with a wonderful young woman that I saw her being born, and now she's helping me get organized. I go, when she was born, I go, someday you will grow up to get me organized. But she, and these friends of hers in their, early mid-20s, and I've known them their whole lives, and they're so wonderful. And they love talking to strangers. Again, it's the ancient thing, always greet the stranger, welcome the stranger, greet the stranger. So they love that. And we talk about how to be boundaried so you don't get killed and everything. But these wonderful moments, in which going by, a homeless guy, she gives him some money and she goes, "Wait, and a little bit of what's your story?" Right? And then she goes, "Well, what do I have a lot of that's not much, that might be great wealth?" She goes, "I have a lot of pens and notebooks," right? So she went back to the guy and she goes, "I just thought that you might like these pens and this notebook." And he burst into tears and he goes, "You have no idea how meaningful this is. It orders my mind to list things, and I haven't had a pen in months, and I used to have a library. I used to have a whole lot." Anyway, we go, these simple things like, and see Jupiter, curiosity and stories. We've got to change the story. We're not being whatever, we're being whatever. It's Jupiter is stories, journey, travel, blessing, and luck, right? And there was an academic study of luck done at Cambridge University that kind of proved that luck increases when we run on the fuel of curiosity and generosity. Oh, I just found this $20 bill. Let me buy you a drink. Oh, you're going to fund my project? Okay. It's, so stories, blessing, luck, are all one heading in this astrological language. And and then the manner is the manner of our relating. An offering serves liberation and renaissance, or an imposition serves tyranny and colonial constraint, no matter what. And we're all kind of working with this, which is why I wanted to say, are we happy? And does it feel like I'm offering things? Don't want to impose things. But see, once we have this as a playful thing in a community, we can have the impositional meter going, offering. Oh, it's a little impositional. And then it's a fun thing. And it just came to me when somebody said, "Oh, can I play you some of the music I wrote?" And I go, "Well, try me. One song, offering. Third and fourth, definitely imposition. Like, how can I get out of here?" Right? And so we want to stay, a conversational atmosphere that is conducive to truth telling in a playful way. Like, what kinds of buddies do we want? What kind of storytelling culture do we want? And let me come back to Trickster, available to all of us, right? So it's nature's evolutionary genius that experiments. And so it, as part of us, does not have a success fail category. Other parts of us do. But Uranus is nature's evolutionary genius that's about, try that. Nope, try that. Nope, try that. Ooh, yeah. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. We're almost there. Okay. That's very cute. Just a crucial thing, because Jupiter says storytelling and everything, says to all of us, it's time, it's time to live, to practice everything we've ever learned, and every little fragment of story or conversation that's been meaningful that we've put in our magic backpack, and now we pull it out going, what would it mean to live this? How do we, ground that and tease that into pertinence? And then just in the stories that we accumulate, one of the the most, one of the things I treasure most is I was in downtown DC, and a very homeless guy came up, just kind of strong aroma, eyes bloodshot, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you magic?" And I said, I try to be. And he shoved a handful of money in my hands and ran away. I'm like, wow, wait, I tried to follow him to slip him a 20, but it's like, wow, the homeless guy paid me for trying to be magic. It's like, that is just like the best. That's one of the, that's better than any like Academy Award or anything. It's like, I love that. It's all fairy tale motifs, and we're all in this dream, and reciprocal blessing. May it go well for you, and fierce blessing. Again, we're allowed to set in motion with our stories and our blessings. A blessing is really like a very short story, of anything that we would happily accept ourselves. So, yes, excellent. Yes, the feeling that there are forces that have our back should we choose to tell the stories. Right, because the stories are alive, and we can also go, what story wants me to tell it? Everything's alive. And so we have, um, oh, that's great. So it's from Celia. I love this. It's a great answer to what time is it? Oh, that's good. It's time to practice everything we've ever learned. Right, it is. And to tease it again, if we know this, then what would it mean to live that? I can give you some very real examples, but we can play with that. And it's also like, the tedious question like, hey, how's it going? Costs nothing to ask, everything to answer. It's like, oh God, how are you? Anyway, but see, in Syria, when it was beautiful, and still now, you don't say how are you or how's it going. You go, what color are you today? And the answer is always Alhamdulillah, all praise the divine. So that's really great. But yes, and then just to come back, and then there's questions, and let's to and fro. That'll be wonderful. That our language, our story, our metaphor be in accord with our dedicated hearts. Those have been hanging with me a little bit, and I think I'm new to many of you, but so I love, let's throw tired language and tired metaphors that were once good but are now imprisoning into the cauldron. So like at the Women's March and everything, just such great atmosphere. And on the stage, though, people were going, I want you to support these people's long, hard struggle. I want to support their effective dedication and their success, right? Because whatever we say, we got more of. Send them more hard struggle. No, effective dedication. Boy, did that work. What a wonderful thing. Fighting. We're going to fight climate change? No, I give it to Bernie and even Bill McKibben because they're old geezers who are not going to change their language. But we're not going to fight climate change, for God's sake. It's fighting that got us into this thing. It's a hot word. Our brains are symbolic. When we use the word fight, our brain goes, cascades polarity, opposition. And if there's anything in this hot cycle that we really want to be, is dedicated to be agents of cool response in a hot reactive world. Not snookered into polarity, because the dementors of doom feed on polarity, hatred, strife. No. And it's an evolutionary guiding story. They do horrible things, evil things. I mean, separating children, babies from evil. That's like I don't use the word evil much, but that's really it. But then they feed on the anger, right? So it's like, no, we want to, what's the guiding story? What's sane, reverent sense? This is where we're going. Over here, come on over here. Don't we want this, right? It's all dog training, politician training. It's like, drop it. Here's a better thing. No. Yeah, you go, hey, over here, there you go, you little dingbat, there, this is what we're doing. We're creating a beautiful world. So for all of us to be animating the all-inclusive, irresistible, magnetizing story of sane reverence, this is where we're going. Come on over here. Critique is part of that. Critique was always meant as diagnostic healing, not just So one of the ways I play with people and myself, is critique and bless, another story, right? Because we accumulate them. But I was working with at Robert Bly's Great Mother Conference, and I got him to hire Neil Douglas Klotz, who's a Aramaic scholar. Aramaic is the original vernacular that Jesus would have spoken in the Middle East. It's a highly metaphoric, symbolic language. And I love what he's done. He said Aramaic, very sensual, nature-based metaphors. And when you translate it into Greek, it loses a lot. So he said, blessed are the meek. What comes to us as blessed are the meek. In Aramaic is more like, blessed are those who soften emotional rigidity within their hearts, for they shall have all the power of nature. It's like, oh, you can really work with that. That's really great. And he said, blessed are the peacemakers. He says it's close. But see, in Aramaic, it would be, blessed are those who plant peace. It's a tangible, nature-based metaphor that has all the power. So anyway, so here we were at Wise Great Mother Conference, and there were Palestinian poets and people in the Israeli army and Jews for Peace from New York, and the community wanted to converse about the problems in the Middle East. And Neil said, these people are not ready for this. I do this for a living with real people, you know, no, we can't do it. I go, come on, but we're going to give it a story frame that everyone who has a critique is then creatively responsible for coming up with a blessing for that thing, right? And, you know, America, we're so blessing deficit, you know, that's what we really need to learn from the Middle East. Underneath all of that, it's a culture woven together with reciprocal blessing. And at first people, you know, somebody would say, the American people are so stupid. And I go, and your blessing would be? And they're like, it doesn't have to be realistic. You know, every time Americans hear lies, may a bevy of wild wolves come into their room and take them out into the woods under the moon, you know, or anything, right? It's like we want to liberate our metaphors are eager to animate that thing. And anyway, so we got there. People are like, you know, and your blessing, right? And people again startled, but like, blessing. Oh, blessing is part of story. And Neil said afterwards, he goes, that was amazing because there was no poison in the room. Right? Everybody had assumed creative responsibility for metabolizing the poison that they generated and that they'd pointed out, right? So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I mean, that's I think that's a really good one. Critique and blessing. So yes, great. So yes, backstage our sultaness, Leah said we have questions from students when we're ready.
I'll also just make a plug that Carolyn does amazing astrological readings, and it's an amazing gift to give to yourself. And yes, go to her Monday night classes. There's more than enough space for all of us. We all of us, you know, bring more and more and more to this than ripples out. So not so eloquent at the end of our talk, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Generosity,
Yeah.
all that you brought us.